The Old Kingdom of Egypt, lasting from around 2686 BCE to 2181 BCE, was a time of unparalleled prosperity, powerful pharaohs, and centralized government. Over the course of 6 dynasties, Egypt's rulers established and maintained a complex political structure that enabled them to control a vast and increasingly sophisticated state. But as the kingdom grew, so did the pressures on its leadership, culminating in a decline that marked the end of this golden age. Welcome back to Dynasties and Tales. My name is Octavius Teller, and today we are embarking on a journey through the political history of ancient Egypt's Old Kingdom, from its meteoric rise to its eventual decline. This era, often called the Age of the Pyramids, is not just about monumental architecture, but also about the kings who shaped and ultimately challenged the centralized power of the Egyptian state. Stick around as we delve deep into the rulers who made their mark during this fascinating period of Egyptian history. The Old Kingdom's rise begins with the Third Dynasty, under the reign of King Djoser. Often credited as the first pharaoh of the Old Kingdom, Djoser brought political stability and centralization, which set the stage for the great achievements of his successors. Djoser's reign, beginning around 2686 BCE, is most famous for the construction of the Step Pyramid at Saqqara, but his influence extended far beyond architecture. Under his rule, Egypt saw the consolidation of power, with Djoser asserting strong control over the nomes, regional administrative districts. This centralization allowed for more efficient governance and resource management, both of which were crucial for the kingdom's expansion. Djoser's reign established the precedent for the pharaoh as a divine ruler, whose authority was absolute. This idea of the pharaoh as both king and god would be a cornerstone of Old Kingdom politics, reinforcing the pharaoh's control over both the state and its people. After Djoser, his successors continued to build upon this foundation. However, the real shift in political power and the true beginning of the Old Kingdom's grandeur would come with the Fourth Dynasty. The Fourth Dynasty, beginning around 2613 BCE, is often considered the golden age of the Old Kingdom. This dynasty was characterized by strong centralization, a focus on monumental building projects, and powerful rulers who solidified their divine status through the construction of the Great Pyramids. Sneferu, the first pharaoh of the Fourth Dynasty, was a key figure in solidifying Egypt's political and economic structure. He is known for his architectural achievements, particularly the construction of 3 major pyramids, which demonstrated his ability to mobilize and control vast resources. More than just a builder, Sneferu was a military leader who expanded Egypt's influence into Nubia and Libya, ensuring the kingdom's dominance in the region. His successful reign set the stage for his son and successor, Khufu, who would take the power of the pharaoh to new heights. While he's best known for the Great Pyramid at Giza, his reign was also marked by significant political moves that helped solidify the pharaoh's power. Khufu's reign, around 2589 to 2566 BCE, is a fascinating period not just for its architectural achievements, but also for the way Khufu navigated the political landscape of ancient Egypt. Khufu inherited the throne from his father, Sneferu, who had already established a strong and centralized state. However, Khufu's challenge was not just to maintain this centralization, but to enhance it further, ensuring that the power of the pharaoh remained unchallenged. The construction of the Great Pyramid, while a monumental feat, was also a political statement, a demonstration of the pharaoh's absolute power and divine authority. The sheer scale of the Great Pyramid reflected Khufu's ability to mobilize and control vast resources, including a large labor force. But beyond the construction, Khufu's reign was defined by his consolidation of power over Egypt's increasingly complex administration. Khufu centralized the government further by ensuring that the nomarchs or regional governors were firmly under the control of the royal administration. This centralization was crucial because at this time, Egypt's wealth and power were growing, and managing this expansion required a highly organized state apparatus. Khufu likely appointed loyal officials to key positions, ensuring that his authority was unchallenged across the kingdom. Khufu also worked to expand Egypt's influence beyond its borders. Though less is known about his military campaigns compared to his father Sneferu, there is evidence that Khufu maintained Egypt's dominance over Nubia, the Sinai Peninsula, and possibly areas in the Levant. By controlling these regions, Khufu secured vital resources like copper and turquoise, which were essential for the continued prosperity of Egypt. Politically, Khufu's reign also emphasized the divine nature of the pharaoh. His association with the sun god Ra was strengthened, and through religious ceremonies and public works, he reinforced the idea that the pharaoh was not just a ruler, but a god-king. This religious ideology played a key role in legitimizing his rule and keeping the Egyptian state unified under his centralized power. Despite his achievements, Khufu's reign wasn't without controversy. Later historical sources, such as the Greek historian Herodotus, depict Khufu as a tyrant, claiming that he exploited his people for his monumental building projects. While these accounts may be exaggerated, they do suggest that Khufu's strong-handed approach to governance left a lasting impression, both positive and negative. Ultimately, Khufu's reign represents a high point in the Old Kingdom's political history. His ability to maintain control over a vast and complex state, while also leaving a legacy through monumental architecture, demonstrates the power and reach of the Egyptian pharaoh during this period. However, the centralized power that Khufu wielded so effectively would also set the stage for future challenges, as subsequent rulers struggled to maintain the delicate balance of power between the pharaoh, the nobility, and the priesthood. So, while Khufu is often remembered for the Great Pyramid, his true legacy lies in the political structure he reinforced, one that would both sustain and challenge Egypt for generations to come. Khafre, Khufu's son, continued his father's policies and built his own pyramid at Giza, along with the Great Sphinx. His reign, lasting from around 2558 to 2532 BCE, maintained the political and economic stability of the kingdom, but the pressures on the centralized state were beginning to mount. The fourth dynasty ended with Menkaure, who built the smallest of the three pyramids at Giza. While his reign was relatively peaceful, it marked the beginning of a shift in the balance of power between the pharaoh and the regional governors, or nomarchs. With the transition to the fifth dynasty around 2494 BCE, we begin to see a shift in the political landscape of Egypt. While the pharaohs of this dynasty continued to build pyramids and maintain a centralized government, their focus began to shift towards religious and administrative reforms. Djoser, the founder of the fifth dynasty, placed a strong emphasis on the worship of Ra, the sun god. This shift in religious focus had significant political implications, as it elevated the power of the priesthood, particularly the priests of Ra at Heliopolis. While the pharaoh was still the supreme ruler, this growing religious influence began to challenge the purely secular authority of the king. Djoser's reign saw the beginning of a trend where the pharaohs increasingly relied on the support of the priesthood to legitimize their rule. This reliance on religious institutions would later contribute to the weakening of central authority as the power of the priesthood grew alongside that of the regional governors. Sahur, who followed Djoser, continued to emphasize religious construction, building temples dedicated to Ra and establishing trade routes that brought wealth to the kingdom. However, his reign also saw the beginning of the decentralization of power, as nomarchs in the provinces gained more autonomy. By the time of Unas, the last pharaoh of the fifth dynasty, Egypt was still powerful, but the central authority of the pharaoh was increasingly being challenged. Unas is known for being the first pharaoh to inscribe the pyramid texts, religious spells intended to protect the pharaoh in the afterlife. But his reign also marked the end of the stability that had characterized the Old Kingdom's earlier periods. The growing influence of the priesthood, combined with the increasing power of the nomarchs, set the stage for the challenges that would face the sixth dynasty and eventually lead to the fall of the Old Kingdom. The sixth dynasty, beginning around 2345 BCE, represents the final chapter in the story of the Old Kingdom. This period saw a slow but steady decline in the power of the pharaoh, culminating in the eventual collapse of the centralized state. Teti came to power during a time of political transition. As the founder of the sixth dynasty, he sought to establish his legitimacy by aligning himself with powerful factions, including the priesthood and influential families through strategic marriages. One of the most notable of these alliances was his marriage to Queen Iput, who was likely the daughter of Unas, the last pharaoh of the fifth dynasty. This connection to the previous royal line helped solidify his claim to the throne. Politically, Teti's reign continued the centralizing policies of the previous dynasties, but he faced increasing challenges. The growing power of the regional governors, or nomarchs, posed a threat to the authority of the pharaoh. While Teti attempted to maintain control by appointing loyal officials to key positions, the balance of power was beginning to shift. The nomarchs were becoming more autonomous, especially in the more distant regions of the kingdom. Teti's reign also saw the continued influence of the priesthood, particularly the priests of Ra. As the religious institutions gained power, the pharaoh's reliance on their support increased. This growing influence of religious authorities, combined with the decentralization of power to the nomarchs, created a fragile political environment. Teti's reign was relatively short, lasting about 12 years. His efforts to maintain centralized control were ultimately unsuccessful, as he could not prevent growing tensions within the kingdom. These tensions culminated in his assassination, an event that highlights the political instability of the time. While the exact circumstances of Teti's assassination remain unclear, it's believed that his death was orchestrated by those within the royal court, possibly even by ambitious nobles or members of his own family. This assassination underscores the weakening central authority in Egypt and the increasing boldness of the nobility, who were no longer content to simply serve under the pharaoh. Teti's death marked a significant moment in the decline of the Old Kingdom. Although his son, Pepi I, would eventually restore some stability, the assassination of Teti set a precedent for the internal conflicts and power struggles that would continue to erode the power of the pharaoh in the years to come. Pepi I, who ruled for nearly 5 decades, attempted to maintain control through military campaigns and strategic alliances, including multiple marriages to powerful families. However, his efforts were often undermined by the growing autonomy of the regional governors, who began to act independently of the central government. The reign of Pepi I's successor, Merenre I, was brief, but it continued the trend of weakening central power. Merenre attempted to assert control over Nubia and maintain Egypt's influence in the region, but his early death left the kingdom in a precarious position. The final significant ruler of the 6th dynasty was Pepi II, who ascended the throne as a child and ruled for an unprecedented 94 years. While his long reign provided a semblance of continuity, it also contributed to the stagnation and eventual collapse of the centralized government. During Pepi II's reign, the nomarchs became increasingly powerful, effectively ruling their regions as independent states. The pharaoh's authority became more symbolic than practical, and by the end of his reign, Egypt was no longer a unified kingdom, but a collection of semi-autonomous regions. The long reign of Pepi II also meant that many of his potential successors died before him, leading to a succession crisis that further weakened the central government. As Egypt's political structure crumbled, so did its economy, leading to widespread famine and social unrest. The final blow came with the death of Pepi II. Without a strong central authority, Egypt descended into chaos, marking the end of the Old Kingdom and the beginning of the First Intermediate Period. This period of political fragmentation would last for over a century before Egypt was eventually reunified. While the Old Kingdom eventually fell, its legacy endured. The pharaohs of this period left behind some of the most iconic monuments in history, and their centralized government laid the foundation for future dynasties. However, the political struggles of the Old Kingdom also serve as a reminder of the challenges of maintaining such a vast and complex state. The rise and fall of the Old Kingdom is a story of both triumph and tragedy. It highlights the power of centralized authority, but also the dangers of overextension and the fragility of even the most powerful empires. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the politics of the Old Kingdom. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on all our latest content. Stay tuned for our next video, where we'll delve into the First Intermediate Period and explore how Egypt eventually rose from the ashes of the Old Kingdom. This is Dynasties and Tales, bringing history to life, and see you next time.